Let's get more on this from Anurag Vishwanath, who is a fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies and joins us from Taiwan. Anurag, thank you so much indeed for your time. Do you think the Chinese government has mismanaged this? There was an opinion poll which showed that in the first 6 months or even the first year of the coronavirus pandemic, a vast majority of Chinese trusted their government. That trust between the government and the people seems to be diminishing.
Well, China has reverse-tracked, and it has reverse-tracked really fast. It should have been a calibrated opening up. It should have been step by step. It should have been slow and gradual. And certain measures should have been put in place. For instance, Panadol supply, oxygen supply, hospital beds, ICU, and of course the vaccination of the elderly should have been ramped up. But China opened up really fast, and it's now facing the full fury of COVID. And of course, yes, in the first phase of Xi Jinping's People's War, the people were with Xi Jinping. But right now, the people are warring against the People's War. They are quite fed up with what's happening in China. And of course, you know, it all boils down to the efficacy of the Chinese vaccines. So there have been a lot of questions about the efficacy of Chinese vaccines, and that, of course, remains a huge question mark.
Why do you think the Chinese government won't allow Chinese citizens to have foreign manufactured vaccines? Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, has said, we can help. This pandemic doesn't have to be as bad as it could be. The Germans are sending BioNTech Pfizer, but they're only going to be given to German nationals who live in China.
Well, right from the start, China wanted to have its own path, its own way, the Chinese way of dealing with COVID. And this Chinese way of dealing with COVID basically meant depending on the scientific community in China to come up with vaccines which would be for the Chinese people and for the rest of the world. In fact, if you look at early 2020 and even late 2020, the inactivated virus vaccine that China made were not only used in China, but they were also sent to all over the world. So that was initially quite a success. But they do believe that believe in the scientific community, and they did think that it was going to resolve their problems. But obviously, U-turning from the zero COVID policy, abandoning it this fast, means an acknowledgement that the vaccines may not have worked, and an acknowledgement that the policy may have failed.
Is there any reason to mistrust, okay, let's use that word, to mistrust the numbers coming out of Beijing? That city itself, and I'm not sure if this applies to the rest of China, but Beijing, in the way it's categorizing the cause of death, I mean, it's only recording deaths from pneumonia and respiratory failure, not necessarily COVID-19. That seems to be a massaging of the figures. Why?
Well, you know, nobody quite knows the real truth about the figures. Let's not forget that, you know, it is bitterly cold in Beijing, and this is the worst time. And Chinese New Year is just round the corner, and Chinese New Year witnesses the largest internal migration of the people. So you have a lot of migrants who are going to go back to the rural areas to visit their families. So this is actually technically the worst time to open up, and China has opened up without any preparations, which of course raises a lot of questions about the Chinese strategy.
Anurag, thank you so much indeed. Really appreciate it. Anurag Vishwanath in Taiwan.